Hey, I'm Serenity and this is my kitchen, and welcome back to another cake video, another holiday cake video. Today we are actually making my brother's birthday cake, and I know what you're thinking, we just saw yours. Our birthdays are 2 days apart, so it's a weekend full of a lot of sugar. And if you cannot guess by this sweatshirt I had to borrow from him, the theme is Venom. The new Venom movie comes out in a couple days when this is posted. He's a big Venom fan, and it felt only right that he got a Venom cake, but I did force him to get a heart cake because that's what I'm good at. So let's get into it. We're gonna start by crumb coating and stacking our cake. So just putting a little bit of buttercream on the bottom half of our cake so it sticks to the board. And then I'm using cream cheese and strawberry filling and layering it on top of each other. Now realistically, I shouldn't have done this. It was wiggling around, and luckily I know how to stabilize a cake, but I had to use a lot of icing just to get it stable. So you're gonna see it's gonna start leaning or oozing out, and that's because the strawberry filling is not stable. So from here, I actually just stuck it in the freezer for about 20 minutes so all of that froze together. And once that was like hard to the touch, I pulled it out to finish my crumb coat. A lot of extra icing to reinforce it. Threw that back in the freezer for an extra 20 minutes, and then it was time to do our top coat on this cake. So I always try to do my crumb coat in white, that way I have an opaque base, and especially when you're using something like black food coloring, because it stains, it's going to get everywhere, and you don't want to use a lot of food coloring in general because you might be able to taste it. So this is the brand of food coloring I use, Enco. And my biggest tip when you're working with black food coloring is actually to let it sit for like an hour or so. That way it oxidizes and it'll naturally get darker. So I'm doing about a 1/2 inch crumb coat after I piped all the way up the cake, smoothing this out. Once it was pretty smooth, I set it in the freezer. That way when I take it out, I can scrape it with a hot spatula. This is the way I like to get my cakes nice and smooth. So I have a separate little bowl where the melted icing goes into. That way it stays separate from my big bowl of icing. Once that's good, I'm going to set it back in the freezer, and we're going to do the fun part, spider webbing. So basically you're just going to take marshmallows, melt them in the microwave for like 15 seconds, and then you can either wear gloves or do this with your bare hands. You're just going to pull the marshmallows together like spider webs, as you can see here. It actually works better when you have bare hands, but I had nails on, so I didn't want to do that. But then I took off the gloves and tried it, and it's actually really easy to wash your hands after. So just use your bare hands. Make sure they're clean, but use your bare hands. And this is to give that like symbioid sort of spider effect, spider web effect for this cake. It's a really easy technique. Finally, it's time to do our piping after setting the cake in the freezer for a bit. So I'm actually going to do a double cake with this. So I'm going to do one message first, scrape it off, and then actually do my brother's birthday cake part because I wanted to make a spider themed cake, and then he also wanted a Venom cake, and I thought I could just use the same cake twice. It's a simple design. So I'm using a 6B tip to pipe my normal borders. This is my favorite tip of all time, and as always, I make sure all my piping goes in the same direction. So it starts at the top of the heart and then it points down to the bottom of the heart. Then I'm going in with a 32 tip from Wilton for the inner lip of the cake and then the top inner part of the heart. And I'm also going to layer the same thing on the bottom part of the heart. And that's really all the piping we're going to do for this cake. It's pretty simple. Most of the action is happening with the spider webs, and I had to include some edible glitter, silver glitter, to give it that little extra something shine. And if you've ever played with these little spider rings as a kid, they make great embellishments for the cake. So I just put 6 on top and 6 on the bottom. And as I said, I'm using this cake for 2 different things. So I put a message that said "caught in your web" on top, took all the pictures I needed of that, and then I just scraped the top off after I set it in the freezer and pulled off the spider rings to reuse. Then it was time to actually do the part my brother wanted. So I'm using a laminated image of Eddie Brock turning into Venom on top of the cake, putting that down in the center, and then using the exact same tips, the 6B and the 32, to pipe around. And you do need to hold the image down just a little bit as you get the first layer of piping done. And that is basically as simple as this cake gets. It's pretty easy to make when you're using laminated images. I put these spiders back on top to give that Spider-Man looking effect. You know what I mean if you watch the movies. And here is the final cake. It's pretty simple to do, actually. It only took maybe an hour from start to finish. And before you ask, yes, the laminated image and the spiders come off before we cut the cake, so no one actually eats those. That is our cake. So for a couple of cakes, I usually do like a double cake where I'll use it twice because you don't want stuff to go to waste, ingredients and stuff like that. So I showed you how I used it for a spider cake and then also for his cake. Really simple design, really easy to do. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you have any cake requests, leave them down below. All my socials are also linked down below. And as always, the doggo picture today is going to be this picture of Nova. Isn't she cute? Well, we love Noah. And yeah, that's all I have for you. Love you, minute kisses, don't think stupid, and I'll see you next time. Bye. I know you told your friend you're not okay.
Tell me what's wrong and why you never said you felt that way.